West Brampton and other communities of people who come from all over the world. And it reminds me what I love so much about Canada, a land where you can come from any place on the planet, plant your flag here, and build a great life through your own hard work. You know, in the following sense, I was born of a 16-year-old unwed mother who just lost her own mom. And so she put me up for adoption to 2 school teachers. And they always taught me that it didn't matter where I came from, it mattered where I was going. It didn't matter who I knew, but what I could do. And that the hope of Canada was that if you put your shoulder to the wheel, you work hard, you can achieve anything you want. And that's why 300,000 plus immigrants come to our country every single year. Not for free stuff, but for freedom, right?
Yes.
The freedom to achieve great things for yourself, to be the captain of your own ship. Unfortunately, of late, that hope has been melting away into fear. Fear that people won't be able to afford nutritious food for their kids, as food prices are up 10% year over year. Single moms putting water in their kids' milk because they can't afford groceries. The fear that they won't be able to afford fuel as rising gas prices, $1.50 a litre now, and Trudeau planning to raise the carbon tax another 200%. Will make it impossible for working people to get where they're going or even take a little vacation on the weekend. Fear for that 35-year-old still living in their parents' basement that they'll never be able to own their own home. And now the prospect of renting is out of reach. Suddenly, rental prices are up 20% year over year. So that is not even a second best option that people can afford. Inflation is now at a 40-year high, and people are being hit with the uppercut of sudden and unexpected interest rate hikes that the government promised would not happen anytime soon.
Poor management.
Right? Very poor management. What is causing all of this inflation? Well, the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary deficits have not only doubled our national debt and caused Trudeau to add more debt than all previous prime ministers combined.
Wow.
But also, those dollars go out into the marketplace and bid up the price of all the goods that we buy. I mean, if you've got $10 and 10 loaves of bread, it's $1 for each loaf of bread. If you double the number of dollars to 20, but you still have 10 loaves of bread, well, $20 for 10 loaves, it's $2. So all of a sudden you've doubled the cost of bread. And now, if you add taxes on the farmers, the bakers, and the transport truckers who bring us that bread, well, then they have to pass that cost on to you. So the more Trudeau spends, the more things cost. It is just inflation. Just inflation. Inflation caused by Justin Trudeau. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we have to make affordable government to make an affordable quality of life. I'm going to pass a law requiring politicians deal with your money the way you do. Here's the law. This is how it works. It's called the pay-as-you-go law. Every new dollar of spending will have to be met with $1 of savings. So every time a politician says, I've got a bright idea, I'm going to spend $100 million on some new program, he's going to have to go look for it in the existing budget to find the savings rather than just passing the cost on to you in inflation, interest rate hikes, and tax hikes. Yeah. That's how you do it in your household. If you want to spend more one place, you spend less somewhere else. So we need to do the same in government. We're going to root out waste. We're going to eliminate dumb programs that deliver low value. What did we get for $500 billion of new spending? $200 billion of it was not even related to COVID. And even on the COVID spending, they were paying people not to work with CERB even after the economy was reopened and 1 million vacant jobs were there. We should have been encouraging people to fill the job vacancies rather than paying them to stay home. We need to reward work again in this country. So instead of creating more cash, what if we create more of what cash buys? So back to my analogy. What if instead of creating more cash, we double the number of loaves of bread we produce? And we have $10 and 20 loaves of bread. Well, now it's 50 cents a loaf. The costs go down. And that's what we need to do. We don't get wealthier by creating more cash. Cash is simply a technology for transferring value over space and time. right? It's just a means of exchange. It doesn't actually have intrinsic value. What has value is that bread, this house, the lumber that goes into making the house. How do we produce more? We have to unleash the power of the free enterprise system and get the gatekeepers out of the way. Let's take housing. We have the fewest houses per capita in all of the G7, even though we have the most land. So how is it possible we have more land than any other G7 country but the fewest houses? Very simple. Government gatekeepers prevent construction with delays to building permits, high development charges. Toronto is going to raise development charges 50% this year. Brampton, under Patrick Brown, already raised it by 30%. And the time it takes, 3, 4, 5 years while the land sits vacant and the builders can't build because City Hall is sitting on the permit. Well, that adds $350,000 to the cost of the average house in Toronto and $650,000 to the cost of every Vancouver house. So here's my plan. A Poilievre government will say to the mayors of the big cities, your infrastructure money will be linked to the number of houses that get completed in your municipality. So get your bureaucracy out of the way, cut the fees, let builders build, and let's get building. Second, I'm going to require every federally funded transit station to be pre-approved for permits for high-density housing like apartments and condominiums so that young people can live right next to the transit station and they don't even need to have a car. Third, I'm going to sell off 15% of the 37,000 federal buildings. They are underutilized, and now many of them are empty because people are working remote. Why not sell them off, turn them into housing, and use the proceeds from the sale to pay down our deficit? This will be a win-win for everybody. In other words, print less money, build more houses. That's how we're going to make it possible for people to reclaim the dream of home ownership. We're going to remove the taxes and the red tape on our farmers to make this the best place on earth in which to grow food. You know, I have a tomato farm in my riding. The Trudeau government hit them with a carbon tax for the CO2 they're releasing into the greenhouse. Even though that CO2 doesn't even go in the atmosphere, it goes into the plant life. Apparently they missed that day in science class, right? And so in Manotick, where this farm is located, it's more expensive to buy a Manotick tomato than a Mexican tomato. So because of our taxes, we're encouraging Canadians to buy foreign food rather than locally grown food, which is bad for the environment because that food has to be transported all the way from Mexico and train and truck burning fuel. We should make it more affordable for our farmers to grow and enhance their production so that they can make more with less on a smaller footprint of land and at a lower price for our customers. Make our own food, be the best breadbasket of the world. I know there are many people from the Punjab here. Lots of farming in the Punjab, eh? The best farmers in the world come from that region. And so finally, we need to produce more energy in Canada. You know, we're importing 130,000 barrels of overseas oil from countries without our environmental standards. We have the third biggest supply of oil on planet Earth, but we have anti-energy laws that make it impossible to produce. I'm going to remove those anti-energy laws to allow us to produce more, allow Newfoundland to increase its production by enough to fully replace all of the overseas oil that we're bringing into Canada so that the money and the jobs stay here and the proceeds that the government of Canada collects from that can be reinvested to green our economy and make our energy sector the cleanest and greenest on planet Earth. That's how we do it. And finally, we need to get the gatekeepers out of the way of our brilliant immigrants. You know, countless doctors come here. You know, I was in Brampton the other day and someone said to me, if you want a heart surgeon, call Uber. Because their chances are the Uber driver might be working as might actually be a heart surgeon, right? But he can't work in his field because the licensing bodies won't accredit him. Why? He's qualified, he did heart surgeries in another country. Well, because the process is bureaucratic, slow, and designed to keep people out. Well, it boils my blood, actually. When I go into an emergency room with my daughter who has a migraine headache, and we sit there with crying and screaming kids for 5 hours because there are no doctors to see us, but then we have thousands of medical graduates who are banned from working simply because they are immigrants. That is unacceptable. So here's my plan. A Poilievre government will sign a deal with the provinces to guarantee that within 60 days of an immigrant professional applying to work within their field, their licensing body must give them a yes or no answer based on their tested abilities.
Amazing!
Yes. Absolutely. And we should create a testing standard so that we accredit people not based on where they come from, but what they know and what they can do. You know, it's an incredible story. We had the head of the Aviation Association come to Parliament and tell us that there was a airplane mechanic working for Air Canada in Germany. So when the planes are in Europe, they need fix up, they go to Munich, this guy fixes up the plane. 20 years, not a single one of his planes fell out of the sky. He made a mistake though. He moved to Canada. And he thought, I'll have no problem. I already work for a Canadian company. So I'll just keep the same job, but I'll do it in Toronto. No, he couldn't get a license to practice on the same planes he'd been working on for decades. Now, what if we just had a test where he could prove his ability? Merit-based system, not based on where you come from. Furthermore, we're going to change the system so that when someone applies, this is something that Bal Gossel worked on when we were in government. When an immigrant professional applies to come to Canada, we should immediately give them a module so that they can begin preparing to accredit and get licensed in Canada before they even arrive here. So that right when they arrive, they can go straight to work. And for those immigrants who just fall short of our standard, I'm going to back up 30,000 small study loans so that they can take time off work. They don't have to drive Uber, and they can actually study, get licensed to practice. They did this in Alberta through a series of charities did it. 97% loan repayment rate, and people saw their incomes go up 300-400% as they went from being baristas or taxi drivers to being doctors and engineers. That's what we need. We need to get the gatekeepers out of the way, more doctors, more engineers, more nurses, more inflation-proof paychecks for our brilliant immigrants in this country. And we're going to protect religious freedom. We want to stand for your ability to teach your children and your family your faith. I oppose Bill 21 in Quebec, which bans people from wearing religious symbols. And I will make sure that no law of that kind ever comes to pass in Canada's Parliament. We should protect the religious rights of every single person. What you wear is your decision and not the role of the government. So, in other words, I want to put you back in charge of your life by making Canada the freest nation on earth. And in the words of the great Canadian Prime Minister, John Diefenbaker, when he signed our Bill of Rights, he wrote on the inscription, I am a Canadian. A free Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand for what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, free to choose those who shall govern my country. It is this heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and for all of mankind. Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
One second. On this note, guys, I just want to request everybody.
Let's get together and take a good picture.
No, just one second.
One
One second. If there is some questions, let's have some questions.
Would you mind throwing, excuse me,
Okay.
would you mind throwing some light on healthcare system?
I just want to request everybody, after listening to Mr. Pierre, I feel so hopeful that the Canada that we came in and we called our home, it's going to stay the way it was. It's going to be shining on the world's map, and people will always be looking forward to move to Canada because of how we built it. And Mr. Pierre will continue to do so. So on that note, I request everybody, please go talk to your friends, to your neighbors, and ask them that it's time for change, and we should help Conservative Party take the charge of this beautiful nation.
Thank you very much, Kamal. Thank you. Thank you.
I have one question.
Okay.
Mr. Poilievre, we have heard your speeches in Parliament outside, and that's why we are here. We like whatever you have to say. But
Thank you.
here you stressed a lot on the immigrants which are coming from outside. You have their problems, but what is you have to say about your own children? I mean to say that the children who are born here and going to universities, right, for higher studies. And I have just heard today, Canada is facing a brain drain problem.
Yes.
Brain drain problem.
Yes.
How can you think of, you are stressing all your energy on the immigrants which are coming from outside. I have just heard the word from this guy today, the brain drain. He is saying, both these kids are saying, Canada is not a good country to live in, where should we move to?
Yeah.
So now you have to say this, what you think about your own children born here in Canada
So
and going
if I may add.
Yes.
So if I may add, so just for context, I'm doing a PhD right now in quantum computing,
Yes.
and as a Canadian, I want to stay here. I want to work in the country, but the opportunities in the United States, salaries there are triple what they are here, even
Right.
before. My question is, even for like graduate school, the funding there, double. Actually just last month, we had NRC from USA come to our lab to look at our research and provide funding. So what do you think
Well, this is.
One more thing.
I have to make it quick.
I am fed up with the popular politics
Yes.
of others, and whenever we see immigrants here, please don't stress. This becomes the popular politics. What you were saying.
Yes, yes.
Say the actual politics.
Thank you.
Think for the Canadians.
Can I respond?
Canadians, not for the
Happy to
immigrants.
respond. So first of all, this is not the speech I give to immigrant crowds. This is a speech I give to every crowd. You should listen to my speeches. I talk about immigrant credentials everywhere I go, and it's popular everywhere I go. Why? Because everybody, whether they've been here, their family's been here for 300 days or 300 years, they want a doctor, they want a nurse, they want better health care. So it's good for everybody. It's not just an immigration policy, it's an economic and healthcare policy. Your question was about why do we have a brain drain? It's very simple. There's more opportunity that can attract people in different countries. I'll give you a perfect example. Speaking of immigration, my grandfather was an immigrant from Ireland. Why did he come from Ireland? Ireland was poor. It was known everywhere as the poor country. Well, today, Ireland has a per capita GDP 70% higher than Canada. 70%. That's like 35,000 US dollars richer per person. Why? Because they opened up their economy to opportunity. They cut their taxes for their workers and their businesses. They made it an open, free place to trade. They made it a very simple place to register a business, to get a building permit, to register intellectual property and have it protected. All of those things make it a magnet for investment and opportunity and higher wages. And so now Ireland is considered to be in a very attractive place for a young engineering graduate, computer scientist, or anywhere else. And so when you look at your future, you say, well, if you go down to a place where you can pay a third of the tax, earn double the salary in a more powerful currency, obviously you're going to be attracted to that place. I don't blame you. You've gone to school for 10 years after high school to build this brain of yours. You want to go where it can do the most good. We should make that place Canada. We need to cut our taxes. We need to make this the fastest places to get a building permit. We need to reform our IP so that we benefit people for when they make an invention and get it patented. We actually need to reduce the taxes that businesses pay after they commercialize their IP, because what happens in Canada, you get a government grant to develop intellectual property when you're losing money, but as soon as it becomes profitable, this is a terrible place to make money because the taxes are higher. And therefore you go and they move that IP to Texas or Florida or Singapore, New Zealand, Switzerland, Ireland, right? We need to win that battle. We need to have the lowest taxes on innovation anywhere on earth if we want to attract and keep the most innovative and brilliant minds here in Canada. It's very simple, and that's what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you.